Okay, and then when you do the question and answer thing at the end,
Repeat.
repeat the question so that,
Gotcha.
Well, behind this morning. Yes. I was so Dr. Edwards is back with us this morning, and he's teaching first, so we'll have some questions for him. So we're glad to have him back.
Thank you for coming back. Didn't scare you off too bad. A preface, I don't know if I said this yesterday, that there's not a one-size approach to common themes. That Weston A. Price book I pointed at was the dentist and he's traveled the world and lived with these people groups. I mean, when you look at each people group, you know, the Eskimos weren't eating what, and they weren't eating what the Africans were eating, and the people. It's not a all. There's some common themes. Look at how our ancestors lived, ate, and try to do that. But there's a lot there. Now, patients we see, so I'll be biased. Our patients typically are pretty inflamed, pretty sick, multiple diseases for many, many years, have tried many different approaches. Usually they failed conventional therapies. So that's a whole different animal when you're dealing with really sick patients. So when you use food as medicine, as Hippocrates said, let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. If you're really going to do that as a physician, we get real narrow with our really sick patients because they're really inflamed. So we have to encourage them to get really, really strict, if you want to call it, or don't cheat at all, or totally cut the grains out completely because we are trying to drop inflammation quickly. Well, that's a sick patient. But once they're well, now that's maintenance mode. So that the food's going to look a little different there. So don't get too caught up in any particular diet or, oh no, I can't ever have a grain again, or carbs are horrible. They're not horrible. Processed ones are, and eating them all the time, yes, they're pretty horrible. Sugar, pretty much horrible. But anyways, so don't get too stuck in a box of this or that or the other. Everyone's individual. This is one, maybe. Do I just hit Zillow? I'm not very techy. Okay. So this slide, that slide, I think that this story, I'll tell you the story and then it'll make sense with that flat tire. So when I was in post, I told you all last time, for 7 years and doing conventional medicine, then I learned there's more to it than what I learned in med school and started implementing it and seeing great results. But it reminded me of this little old lady that came in one of my first years there in post, and this was on a Friday afternoon. And at 4:30, a 70-something-year-old lady with no appointment just walks in. And I'm, it's the end of a long week. It's 4:30. I'm done with my appointments. I'm trying to get my charting done to get to the Friday night football game. And this lady walks in with chest pain. And my first reaction, I hate to say, was, oh, great. Little old lady, what are you doing in here? But she walks in with chest pain. So very quickly, doctors are trained to ask a few questions because we've got to categorize that chest pain, that symptom, that complaint. We've got to put a label on it or categorize it. Is that chest pain coming because she picked up a 5-gallon bucket of something and pulled a rib or a muscle? Is that chest pain from acid coming up her throat? Is that chest pain from angina, from not enough oxygen to the heart muscle? So just within a few minutes of talking to her, it was quite apparent this was from heartburn. So very, very quickly, I could write that prescription. I categorized that symptom with the label, so every label has a pharmaceutical to go with it. So her diagnosis or label was GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, and I wrote a prescription for Prilosec probably, and went to hand it to her, and she wouldn't take it. And she told me, and at the time as a physician, I didn't know what she was talking about. And I No, I'm not. I'm treating disease. Disease, GERD, disease for disease. That's your disease. And she just was belligerent about it. No, you're treating. And I mean, mind you, this is like 4:45. I'm trying to get out of there. So we're kind of arguing about it. And she just wouldn't listen to me. So I said, ma'am, you can either suffer from this pain every night when you lay down in bed and this pain gets worse, and you may get esophageal cancer. Cells are not designed to see, or they can handle it, but not these esophagus cells. So esophageal cancer, reflux, treat. So I tried to scare her, and she still wouldn't. And I said, ma'am, Adam and Eve, the garden, they sinned, you know, man, the fall of man came in, and sickness came in, and death and dying and disease. And luckily for you, God made doctors with brains and that can figure all this out and give you something to help you. So please take it. And she still wouldn't. You're just treating my symptoms. And so I finally just shoved it in her purse, said, you don't have to take it to the pharmacy, but that's all there is. Suffer or take this prescription. And I walked out pretty much. And what she was getting at was this option 3. I need to quit talking so much because I keep disconnecting, I think. But this option 3, fix it. And I didn't know there was an option 3 of fix it. And so the analogy with the flat tire there is my wife one time had a flat tire, but it wasn't just totally flat like that. It was that slow leak, tiny little hole. So I could take it to the filling station, fill it up with air, and you should be okay for 3 or 4 days till it slowly leaked down again. And I'd run it and get some more air in it and fill it back up. She's good for 3 or 4 days, got her stuff done, got the kids where they need to go, and did all her things. And I just kept doing this for like 6 weeks. I'd take it and fill it up with air once a week. And so it was okay. That quick fix, temporary fix was okay in the moment. But what are the unintended consequences of that, or the side effects of that? I'm no mechanic, but probably that's not good for the life of that tire, deflating and inflating over and over. Probably it's putting more stress on the other 3 tires, or the alignment was getting off, and the shocks and struts, something probably bad was happening to those. Increased her risk for a blowout and a rollover and death and injury and all these things that I was putting her at more risk for by not fixing it. And so that's what we do in America is, unfortunately, treat a symptom, the quick fix. And that's what that lady was talking about. I don't want Prilosec to just fix a symptom. I want to know why. Why did this start? And how can we fix it? But in med school, we get trained in chronic disease management, unfortunately, instead of disease reversal. Now, that will sound weird to people that have no clue, which is most Americans and me and most doctors don't have a clue that this is even possible, because your thought would be, well, why wouldn't they teach that in med school? That was my thought when I started learning this. How could this be? This can't be. You know, because they would have taught me in med school. Those were nice professors in med school. They're really smart. And if there was something more that could help y'all, help patients, they would have taught me. So this was a major battle in my head, back and forth, this cognitive dissonance where you're taught one thing, believe one thing, but you're seeing something else, and it just doesn't align. And so it was an interesting time in my life. But this helped me a lot to understand that there's just 3 options, and y'all just need to know them, and then you pick one. What I think someone did was decide for y'all that option 3 is just off the table, because you're not going to do it. You're not going to get off the sugar, because sugar's a drug and you're addicted. You're not going to change your diet. You're not going to quit stressing. You're not going to slow down and say no to stuff. We're too busy, and we're eating cheap food that's readily available. And I think someone just thought there's no way Americans are going to quit doing that. So this option 3, we'll just not even talk about it. And then it's a system of insurance where you have 7-minute visits. There's no time to talk about it. So here's what I really want to talk about today. Rosebuera intestinalis. This is going to be a fun lecture, science class. That's a particular bacteria in your gut. And if you have, as a kid, if you have not enough of those particular bugs, you're more likely to get diabetes. Here is, I'm not even going to try to pronounce those four, F, L, V, and R, 4 different bacteria in your gut. These are good bacteria. If you don't have enough of those, you increase the risk of asthma. Here's another bacteria that should be in the gut, and if it's not, you're going to be more likely to have a peanut allergy. So this is a researcher from Australia a few years ago. I think he was in 15. He took these kids with horrible peanut allergies. I mean, I'm talking the really bad, I got an EpiPen everywhere I go, peanut allergy kids. And he gave them this particular bacteria in a particular manner. There's a protocol to it, but 80% of those kids resolved their peanut allergy with a bacteria that should be in your gut. Here's a bacteria from the gut that if it's out of balance and there's too much of it, an increased number of these will hyperstimulate the immune system. A hyperstimulated immune system is going to be too aggressive, attacking too much, and will accidentally start to attack some of your own tissue. So we call that autoimmune disease. Autoimmune, your own immune system attacks yourself, your own tissue. So if it's in your joints, we call it rheumatoid arthritis. If it's in your gut, we call it Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. If it's in your skin, we call it psoriasis. If it's in your brain, we call it MS. These are all the same basic diseases. They're autoimmune diseases. So it's really a problem with the immune system. It's just manifesting in these different areas of the body. But if you go to your doctor, you're going to get compartmentalized, like I tried to do that lady with her reflux. If it's on your skin, you'll go to the dermatologist. If it's in your joint, you'll go to the rheumatologist. If it's in your gut, you'll go to the gastroenterologist. If it's in your brain, you'll go to the neurologist. So we compartmentalize and segment all this out, and no one's really looking at the underlying issue, which is immune system dysfunction. A hyperstimulated immune system creates a lot of inflammation. So the dermatologist, gastroenterologist, neurologist, and all the other ologists, they're going to give you different kinds of pharmaceuticals that are anti-inflammatory or anti-immune system. That hyperstimulated immune system is going to be turned down or shut all the way off by a drug. That's why at the end of the commercial for, I don't know the latest ones, but like Humira, what's Phil Mickelson, the golfer that he takes one of those, but all those drugs at the end of the commercial, what's it say? Tell your doctor if you've been traveling somewhere that it has TB, or if you're prone to fungal infections, or if you get a fungal infection, you're going to be at increased risk for all these infections because you're on a drug that's tamped down, or is shut immune system. But the real question is, why is the immune system hyperstimulated to begin with? And that's the only way you can get down to really help these patients long term and truly try to bring resolution to these autoimmune diseases, which they can go into remission. These patients always be prone to it, but if they fix the diet and lifestyle, mostly it's fix these bugs in the gut, they can go into long-term remission. We have multiple patients that have done that. Some of those testimonials are on the website. Here's some more bacteria that break down pesticides. BPA is a chemical that's ubiquitous in our culture, and it acts like estrogen. So that will cause hormone disruptions in males and females. Of course, pesticides is a whole lecture in and of itself, but there's 4 different pesticides there that the gut bacteria will break it down. So we see a lot of young ladies who are having hormone-related issues, and they're estrogen dominant. They have too much estrogen effect, not enough progesterone, so they're out of balance. And environment bacteria to break these things down. But what if you don't have those bacteria? 90 different strains of gluten. Sorry, y'all can't see this one. In your gut that break down gluten, but you have to have them, obviously. And if you're not going to break down gluten and cross over into the body later and makes somebody to it. Now you're gluten sensitive. One side note on God made is called einkorn wheat, and it stands about 4 foot tall. I call that God wheat. It has 14 multiple hybridizations by man, especially in 1970, Dr. Norman Borlaug, and he won the Nobel Prize for this big hybridization, and he changed God's wheat to dwarf wheat. Dwarf wheat's 18 inches tall. It's drought resistant, wind resistant, yields 10 times greater than God's wheat. So he won the Nobel Prize for curing world hunger with this hybridization. But today's modern wheat, dwarf wheat, 46 chromosomes. Totally new gluten proteins than what God made. The original God gluten, I call it, doesn't even register on our gluten sensitivity tests that we do in the lab now, because these are totally different glutens. So not only do we not have the bacteria diversity anymore in the gut to break them down, but we're also dealing with a whole new gluten molecule, basically. And the starch content of that new wheat changed so that it readily turns into blood sugar in the body. I had to book yesterday up here Wheat Belly, and on the back of Wheat Belly it says 2 pieces of whole wheat bread will raise your blood sugar as fast as a can of soda. He has a picture of 2 pieces of bread on the back of the book to remind people of how quickly the body will break down modern wheat and turn it into sugar. So there we go, the 94 strains of bacteria. And here's a bacteria that will halt skin cancer growth. When they took this bacteria out, the skin cancer grew. When they put it back in, the skin cancer growth was halted. Here's a study that talks about certain bacteria that if you're missing it, you'll make more kidney stones, because these bacteria secrete certain chemicals that interact with our physiology. So if you're missing this one, you're going to be more prone to a kidney stone. This sounds crazy, but I'm a crazy doctor, so we talk about crazy stuff. Fecal transplants. And now these studies were done in mice, but they're starting to do them in humans too. And a fecal transplant's exactly like it sounds. They'll take fecal matter from a healthy person, transplant it into the colon, and they reverse type 2 diabetes, MS, autism, ulcerative colitis, and obesity. We did have an ulcerative colitis patient who was with us for a couple of years. Tried really hard, did everything we asked her to do, and she got better, but not all the way better. And that's our goal, is all the way better. So there's a doctor in Tampa, Florida, who's probably the world's leading authority on these transplants. We sent her there and she got 3 transplants, and her ulcerative colitis symptoms were done. And she called me a month later to brag that she just ate some enchiladas and ice cream and she didn't flare at all. And this lady was going to the bathroom 10 times a day with bloody diarrhea. It's amazing what these bacteria, 2/3 of a stool is bacteria. And it's amazing what these bacteria will do when you have them. The microbiome is what we're talking about. This is the blend of gut bacteria. The big overarching term is microbiome. And you can't see the bottom of that slide, but this is in the year 2000, there were 0 studies with the word microbiome. So I graduated med school in 2002, and there were two in the entire world with the word microbiome. And then you can see the escalation. So that far one is 2015. There are 2007 articles published that year with the word microbiome. So this is pretty new stuff. Most doctors are too busy to keep up with 2,000 new articles just on the microbiome because they're busy with 7-minute visits. A study came out in New England Journal of Medicine. It takes 17 years on average for the doc on the street to change the way they practice. When a transformational study came out, 17 years. Of those 2007 microbiome studies, multiple of those studies were transformational, like the MS one. Another one I didn't mention on the MS study, they looked at the gut flora makeup of people that live in India, because there's very little MS in India. But then they looked at immigrants from India to the US, and they followed these guys and gals over time and watched their gut flora, and it shifted and changed, and the makeup became American gut flora, and their MS rates rose to equal our rates. So pretty interesting study. So real quick in the remaining minutes, I want to reinforce these good bacteria concept. So because the point is, yesterday we talked about fueling your mitochondria, but also we want to fuel and feed and nourish your gut bugs. So these bacteria, this is your colon, and the good bacteria, and you should have trillions of good bacteria. They've looked at native cultures and studied their stool, and 30,000 different species of bacteria. You know all those different names I threw up there? 30,000 different is what we used to have. So the average American will have maybe 1,000. If you're really healthy, maybe 5,400. So we've lost of these bugs. I guess we would call them, although I'm is a bad bug. I think there's bugs that get out of balance, but E. coli, parasites, salmonella, different bugs, polio lived in our gut for thousands of years. That's a whole nother topic too. But the point is, there's good ones. Is a ratio 85% good, 15% good. And when you're like that, things will be pretty good. What happens is, in standard American life, we eat food, 5% of what goes in, chemical, antibiotic laden. Talked to kindergartners at KPA, and I brought some God food versus man food, and I pulled out some Pop-Tarts and read those ingredients, which I hadn't done in a while. You ought to do that. It is awful. And it's processed food-like substances. It's not even food that we're eating. And that's 65% of what's going in our mouth as a standard American. Well, I know y'all aren't standard. But when you eat that, the chemical and antibiotic, 80% of the antibiotics in America are not given out by Walgreens. It's in the food. It's given to the animals. The chicken, the pork, beef, so, and the milk, full antibiotics. Now, it's low level, but if you're eating it all day, every day, year after year, those antibiotics wipe out your good guys. And then if you, like most of our patients, had an ear infection when you were a baby and antibiotics, and then you throw it, and then you have a good guys. That's if you even start with enough good guys, because where you get the good ones is from your mama. And when you pass through the vaginal birth canal, you pick them up. When you get the almost 7% of babies a day are C-section. They've studied these babies. Identical to the skin hospital worker in your gut. It's not going to provide you all the benefits of all those bugs that I mentioned at the top of the show. So you need to start out good, vaginal birth in a healthy mama, breastfed, and then you have bugs come in and wipe this out. Processed food comes in and wipes this out. Splenda to artificial sweeteners. Splenda has been shown 50% of the bugs in our gut. Chlorine in the water kills bugs. Glyphosate, which is a main in Roundup, it will kill your gut bugs. It's an antibiotic. It was patented first as an antibiotic. The EPA safe limit for human consumption was raised to 40 parts per million, but some research out of Germany shows that 1/10 of 1 part per million of Roundup kills your gut bugs. So most Americans have compromised flora. These days, because from mama, they're starting out behind the 8 ball, and then standard American diet full of chemicals, pesticides, and antibiotics. I mean, our drinking water's even full of this stuff. Kills it. So we've really narrowed it. So a lot of patients, it's just a matter of get their gut back. And it's amazing, the results. And we don't take any or doing language that there be wasn't trained in these deeper things. I got 2 hours of nutrition and 4 years of med school. So doctors don't understand it at all unless they've gone wrong. Doctors do. I used to bluff a lot because you're the doctor. You are the answer. You kind of have to come up with an answer. I hate to say. I'm sorry, I don't know that. Avoid those things. Eat real food. That's the point. We can get into ratios of carbs and fat and all that, but just eat real food and eat food that doesn't have chemical and antibiotic in it. That's the best encouragement I could give you. Allison said I could go over. So if y'all need to go to a meeting, go ahead. 2 minutes, real fast. I have to say this because this is a big deal. Some of these bad guys are candida. It's a yeast. Like you get a yeast infection, either thrush on your mouth, vaginal yeast infection, whatever, athlete's foot, all that's same thing. It's yeast or fungus, same thing. But these guys live off sugar. The average American's eating a pound of sugar every 2 days. Your great-grandparents, it took them a year. So we're feeding fertilizer to the bad guys. So now we get this huge overgrowth of the wrong bug, mostly candida, and it moves into the bloodstream and it travels around in the blood and it settles in your sinuses. Mayo Clinic did a study on chronic sinusitis. The average person had 3 different breeds of fungus causing their chronic sinus. Antibiotics don't kill fungus. Antibiotics kill bacteria. Antibiotics actually make fungus worse. That's why they're chronic sinus. They never get over it. Chronic prostatitis, arthritis, all these itises, a lot of times, the bug that the immune system's going after, the hyperstimulated immune system, well, it's hyperstimulated sometimes because of an overgrowth of candida. And if you just cut the grain and sugar down, not only are you going to fuel the mitochondria from yesterday, you're going to starve these guys down and drop your inflammation. So it's pretty cool. When you get the diet right, you're hitting this from all angles. You're going to feed the good bugs, excuse me, and you're going to feed your mitochondria the right stuff. Last thing I want to say, and then we'll do questions, and this is a whole nother lecture, so maybe we'll come back someday if y'all will have me back, but your thoughts that are more powerful than all this stuff I've talked about, because the inside the cell, I did not mention yesterday. I mentioned the nucleus, the DNA, the carburetor, and the cell membrane, but all this here is water. I mean, 98% of you is water, but the water inside this cell is not H2O, it's H3O2. It's called the 4th phase of water. If you haven't heard of it, Gerald Pollack, University of Washington, discovered this a few years ago. Last year, and go look it up. Great guy, interesting stuff he figured out. But there's 4 phases of water. It's not liquid, solid, and gas. There's this 4th phase. It's kind of like this jello type state, and it's inside your cells. What it does, it has a charge to it. It has a negative charge. That cell membrane has to be charged to function right. It's like a battery. But the charge is coming from the water, the order of the water. So H3O2, the water molecules line up in a very orderly manner, and it creates this charge. But it's the order that creates the gel-like structure and the energy. A thought, a negative word, will bring disorder to the physical structure. That water will change, and there's pictures of this. Dr. Emoto out of Japan, E-M-O-T-O, I think. But when you speak a negative word versus the truth, speak a lie versus the truth, negative versus a positive, it changes the structure of that water. And constant stress and negative thoughts and lies from the enemy coming in will destructure you. That cell will lose its energy capacity, you lose its battery effect, and it won't work right. And that's more powerful than everything I talked about yesterday on the mitochondria, and more powerful than these gut bugs. So most patients come to us ready to work on their diet because they heard we're the diet people. And we do that, obviously, and people just want to camp out right there. But there's 4 pillars: nutrition, hydration, movement, and peace. And people want to pick one of those and just like exercise all day and kind of not work on the diet, or just do the diet only and not do anything else. But of all those, peace is the biggest disruptor of health. And you'll see the biggest leaps in the health, getting your health back, when you're at peace. And peace boils down to truth versus lies, in my how I interpret it. If you're peace, and that will order your water. I just had to throw that in because it's so cool, and because I don't know when I'll get to talk to y'all again, and it's very, very important, way more important than food. But I say, why hedge your bets? You know, why play Russian roulette? Because people say, okay, well, how much can I cheat, or how much can I? Maybe I'll exercise harder so then I don't have to eat quite as good. And I mean, you can try all that you want. I look at it as let's do things that make the body resilient to all the negative stuff that could take us down and drive inflammation. So build your resilience. I can't tell you each individually how much does that mean you got to work on the diet versus a peace versus a hydration versus a movement. I mean, we kind of need to do it all. So be encouraged. You have a third option. You don't have to suffer, and you don't have to just take a pharmaceutical, although it's okay if you want to do that. But there's a third option. Fix it. The 4 pillars: nutrition, hydration, movement, and good gut bugs. Feed your mitochondria the right way, and feed yourself with the living water, which is the truth, and that'll help your physiology more than anything.
So probiotics.
The question is, are there good or bad probiotics? What's the best way to go there? There's a lot of bad ones. Bad mean there not enough of them. There's a few million when you need trillions. There's not enough of a radical. And it's going to have maybe the top I've seen. Most will have 1 or 2, and 5 million, maybe even 5 billion. CFUs, colony forming. It's 100 billion, but a wide variety, like 10 bacteria with 100 billion. That's a pretty decent one. But then you got to get it through your stomach acid. You got to the colon, and then it needs to actually settle in there and put a hole and make some babies and grandbabies and multiply. And the studies show that none of the probiotics really do that much, if at all. They don't really repopulate you. What they do is there's immune system cells that 80% of your immune system is right on the other side of your gut. And they put a cell, it's called a dendrite cell in here. And those probiotics wash by here, and they interact with that immune system cell to calm down inflammation. So that's the biggest function of a probiotic, in my opinion, is just the anti-inflammatory effect. It's not really going to colonize and repopulate you. So fermented foods are better at doing that. Sauerkraut is probably most common fermented food, but don't get the one in the can on the shelf, because that's been pasteurized, so the good bugs are dead. You want one in the refrigerated section. And there's lots of different options out there these days. A kind of common one is called Bubby's sauerkraut. They have pickles and relish and other things too. So go fermented foods. Probiotics are okay. They're not hurting you. I just don't know they're helping that much unless you get a really high quality one. Yes, sir.
You go about maybe testing to see
if you're deficient in gut bugs. You could do that. Ubiome, I think is the name of it. Basically, they send you a kit. You send them some stool back, and they will analyze it for you. Yeah.
I'm just thinking, how do you know what to fix?
Yeah, that's why that company exists. They had the same thought, and could they get some data? Because they also have a medical questionnaire, and they're trying to get in, make some useful information available. My opinion is it's too early in the game. I don't think anyone's really figured out yet, number one, how to measure them all. And number two, how to quantify that accurately and what does that mean? And can you really change it? And how do you change it? And I mean, if you're low in this one, what do you do? So my take on it, and this could change in a year or 5 years, is be in lots of different environments. Don't get stuck in just an office, just your home, and just whatever park you normally go to or golf course you normally go to. Mix it up. So take some vacations in the mountain, but go to the desert, go to the beach, go to different environments. Find a barnyard to go to and mix it up with the goats and the cows and the chickens, and get some chicken poop on your boots. But a lot of environments. And this is really coming out of Dr. Zach Bush out of Virginia. He developed a product called Restore, and basically it's a mineral blend. But it's from this ancient layer of peat moss, I think from Noah's flood. But when you harvest that old decayed peat moss, there's some molecules in there that turn out to be communicating molecules that the bacteria use to communicate with each other. And when you put those in the gut, somehow it brings diversity. So Zach Bush had a cancer patient, had taken chemo, so they had killed all their flora. They had chalky white stool is the medical term, and that means all their gut bugs are dead. And all this lady did was take that Restore product, and she was out in her garden. So he assumed she breathed some in, maybe swallowed some dirt, but basically she was just in an environment that bacteria were introduced, and then that product, I think, just sped the process up. So eat real food, be in a wide variety of environments, and I think your body will do what it wants to do, which is get back to balance. So the ones that there's too much of will go down. The ones you need more of will go up. The ones that aren't there will diversify and come. That's what I think. But yep, apple cider vinegar. What do I feel? How do I feel about that? Is a question. I like it. It's really good. I like it more because I recently found out it will neutralize the glyphosate, the Roundup that is in rainwater. It's in everything. But you want to get apple cider vinegar that has the mother in it, if you've seen that maybe. So it hadn't been pasteurized or processed. It's a natural apple cider vinegar. The mother is the good bacteria growing. At the bottom, it's kind of cloudy. That's good. You want that. So doing some of that every day even is great. That's another way to get probiotics in, basically. And it can help digestive function too if you're not making enough stomach acid. So the question is, what about artificial sweeteners? If it's a chemical man-made one, which would be aspartame, NutraSweet, and sucralose, which is Splenda. And there's some others, saccharin. Stay away from those. Plant-based ones, which would be stevia and monk fruit, M-O-N-K. You're seeing more and more of that these days, at least I am. Those are good ones. They're plants, totally natural, fine. They don't jack your blood sugar up. They have the sweet taste, but they don't spike the sugar, and they don't feed the candida. So those are fine.
So if you're doing the diet, eating right, the peace, the hydration, how long does it take to get your gut back in where it should be?
Okay, the question is, if you're doing all the things, nutrition, hydration, movement, and peace, how long will it take for you to get your gut flora back in balance? It's individualized. If you were a C-section baby who was bottle fed and had 10 rounds of antibiotic in the first 5 years of life, it's going to take a lot longer than if you're vaginally birthed and breastfed and only had 1 round of antibiotic or no rounds of antibiotics. So really does depend on how decimated is the gut. It's kind of like asking how many scoops of dirt will it take to fill this hole. It depends on how deep and wide that hole is. But in general, I would say you're kind of average American who's not just crazy sick, like horrible autoimmune and cancer and stuff. 6 to 12 months probably. To speed that up, the GAPS diet, I didn't get out all my books today, but one of the books is Gut and Psychology Syndrome, Dr. Natasha McBride, the acronym GAPS, Gut and Psychology Syndrome. And if you do her diet, Hers is specifically formulated or designed to bring that gut flora back aggressively. But we tend to only use that in really sick patients. So I've seen that still take a year. And I think that's what she quotes in the book. But if someone who wasn't as sick wanted to be that aggressive, it's tons of bone broth, and you make your own fermented from local, from the bacteria that are in your environment. You can speed that process way up. We had a little girl with Tourette's and kind of OCD symptoms, and she'd been to an integrative guy in New York because the conventional therapies weren't working at all. So this family, they're from Marble Falls, they went to New York. He had her on 20 different supplements. She was probably 50% better, which was great, because they hadn't gotten any better. But they plateaued for about the past year. They were plateaued. So they came to see us, and I asked them, well, what about the diet? What did y'all do there? And then we kind of cut sugar a little bit. And so I put them on GAPS, the gut and psychology syndrome. And it took her a year, but at a year's mark, she was down to 2 supplements instead of 20. And she went from 50% better to 99% better from getting her gut back. But it took a year, but she was a decimated gut flora. And I didn't mention here, these gut bacteria also produce your brain chemistry. Serotonin, melatonin, all these good brain chemicals that keep your mood steady and keep your brain functioning. Most of them are made down here. Like 80% of your serotonin is made here, and it travels up. And that's the point of Dr. McBride's book, Gut and Psychology Syndrome. So if you go see her, it doesn't matter if your diagnosis is bipolar depression, schizophrenia, OCD, or whatever brain diagnosis label, fix the gut, because there's a huge connection between the gut and the brain. ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, all those things. So it's a fascinating book, but it's designed to get that flora back aggressively.
So there's a book called The Brain Maker.
Brain Maker, David Perlmutter. Yes, Perlmutter's a neurologist. His first book, Brain, and then Brain Maker, same thing. There's this connection between gut inflammation and brain inflammation. Brain inflammation will manifest because you don't have nerves in your brain tissue that will tell you a pain. So the symptoms of inflammation in your brain are, I can't remember that name. Where did I put my keys? Memory loss. And then you can get into other things as you progress, tremors, issues are all so that or improves it a lot. Dr. And there's more, but having any improvements on neuro gut back, the inflammation of the brain will come down if you get that. So yep, great Brain Maker. Wheat belly. What's my take on taking turmeric is a question. Any herb, turmeric's an herb. Thumbs up as far as anti-inflammatory, mostly anti-inflammatory. So turmeric's a great anti-inflammatory. So if I tweak back Advil, turmeric or extract of turmeric is called curcumin. So I'll grab that and use it instead. Really, tea, kind of like store tea up here. You can put other stuff in it. Depending, it could be the same thing because what's inside the capsules is powder. It really depends on how did they process it, where was it grown, how they process it. You just want a quality company. But the best is go to the grocery store and get some, grate it, seep it. I mean, it's super easy. And then get a strainer and drain it out into your tea. That's the best. Turmeric, it's a root, kind of like ginger. You can go just a ginger root. It's like it, but it's orange. Last time I was at Market Street, I got some there, but I know natural grocers usually have it too. I don't know if it's seasonal or not. It's been there every time I've looked.
Last question that's really in my mind is who are
What's your name?
James.
James's question is, that's burning in his mind. Who are these fecal donors? Interesting, you should ask. They are people that have been screened. Usually it's a family member. It's what they spouse would be best because you're already sharing fecal matter. You don't realize you are, but you are. So usually it's a spouse, family member, but they are screening just healthy individuals. And it turns out the best stool is coming from people who would have thought that are eating real food, that are in more of a rural environment because they're out in a barnyard and stuff like that. And they're not full of infections and all that. And now they're starting to, I just read an article the other day, they're starting to actually quantify these different donors that this person, Miss Smith, whenever her stool seems to really help ulcerative colitis patients, but it hasn't been helping, I don't know, rheumatoid arthritis patients. But they're starting to classify, they don't know why Miss Smith, they haven't figured out which bugs it is, but now they're starting to have donor groups that are specific for certain diseases. So get real healthy and become a fecal donor. I'm sure there's some money in it somehow. I nominate you to be the founding father.
You haven't talked much about hydration. Just in real brief form, what are your thoughts on hydration?
Obviously, hydration is super important because we're mostly water, and inside the cell, we're mostly water. Hydration's needed to wash out your toxins. To make energy, you got to clear the exhaust I talked about yesterday. Well, part of that clearing the exhaust is washing it out, and you need clean water to do that. Right along with water, though, is movement, because I interviewed a lady, Gina Bria. She wrote a book called Quench. It's a great book on hydration. And her main 2 points are eat your water, don't just drink it. If you try to drink 8 glasses of water, or whatever the rule of thumb is, most of that's going to run off of you. Just like we get a big rain on a field that's just dirt, it's going to run off. Her point was you got to eat foods that have water in them, cucumbers and apples and living food that has water. Also, she made the point of certain things like chia seed. Put chia seed into a glass of water and let it just sit there overnight. It'll soak all that water up and become like a pudding. That's actually a structured water. And I didn't mention the structured water inside your cell. The water inside a vegetable is structured. But chia seed water is structured. Even putting sea salt into water will start the structuring process. So try to eat your water for hydration. And that's mostly going to be vegetables. But the chia seed, she talked about a tribe in South America that runs 50-mile marathons, and they do it off this chia seed pudding because it holds the water in your gut like a sponge, and it will release it slowly as you need it throughout the day. The other thing she mentioned was a French hand surgeon a few years ago was doing surgery, laparoscopic surgery on a hand. He had a camera in there, fiber optic camera, and he couldn't really see good enough, so he had his nurse put a tourniquet up here on the arm to cut the blood flow so he could see better. And the moment they did that, all of a sudden, he could just see this glistening effect, kind of like a soaker hose in your garden, all the million little pinpoint holes in those hoses, and the water will just sort of seep out. That's what he saw, all these tiny little water droplets coming out of the fascia. The fascia is this kind of like cellophane or saran wrap material, but it's this, well, like on a chicken breast, when you start to peel that stuff back and there's that kind of layer. We have this fascia, it's like a spider web material from head to toe, intertwined all through our muscles, wrapping around our organs, wrapping around our gut, everywhere. But the water is coming through the fascia. This is what this guy discovered. So we're hydrating ourselves through the fascia, but the fascia will squirt the water out when you move, when you twist, when you bend, when you squat, when you go up the stairs, as opposed to just sitting. So you're not going to hydrate well if you just sit all day. So you need to even just do some twists. She talks about it in her book, just some simple movements. So if you can get natural water, it'll be structured. So if you juice or if you get spring water, if the spring water sits in a bottle too long, it'll unstructure. Or there's water bottles or canisters for your countertop. You put the water in, and there's a device in there that structures it. So if you can, drink living, charged, structured water. And when you do that, you'll hydrate better. And then move and you'll hydrate better. But you need that hydration to give you the energy and to clear out the toxins both.
I'm not familiar with the term structured water.
It's the fourth phase of water that Gerald Pollack discovered, but kind of the term that's sticking in everybody's mind is structured water. I think it was in August or maybe it was October. Go on our website, go to the radio show, the archives, and just start scrolling down. And I did a couple shows recently in the fall on structured water. Gina Bria with Quench was one of them, but then I interviewed a guy who has a company that makes devices that you can buy for your home. There's a full home structuring unit versus even just a handheld that you pour your tap water through this little handheld device and hold your cup at the bottom and it structures it, to these water bottles, to canisters on the countertop. And we got one after I interviewed him at our office. We got one of these countertop canisters just for the lobby, for the waiting room. But I noticed just last week, the poinsettia that some patient gave us, 8 weeks ago probably, in our waiting room looks brand new. Like I thought it was fake. And the front desk girl, I said, "Are you a green thumb?" And she says, "No, I kill every plant I ever touch or look at." She's been watering it. And the only thing she's been doing is getting water out of the canister of the structured water and watering that poinsettia. And it's beautiful. And and on that show, we talk about the agricultural applications of structured water in the strawberry field study in particular. I forget the number, but it was significant increased production on that strawberry field compared to half the field that they did not irrigate with structured water. So it's a fascinating topic, but it's natural water, rain, any water found in nature that's moving is structured, which just means the water molecules are lined up orderly and it's H3O2 and it's charge. I'm not the expert in structured water. What I've been told is if it's water moving in nature, so I would think, though, it would depend. Barely moving, pretty much stagnant, it will lose structure. So I don't know how much that's moving. But if you bring that up and sit it somewhere in a big holding tank somewhere, it's going to definitely destructure then. But if you're getting like in your own personal well straight into your house, it probably has some structuredness to it still. What we did was they have an inline unit. You can put the pipe going from your well into your house. We just cut a section of that pipe, put this inline unit, and so it gives it a little extra structuring on the way into the house. And then we have it under the sink unit, kind of like an RO, has a little faucet on top, but under the sink, so it filters, then it mineralizes, then it structures it and sends it up to the faucet. But there's all kinds of devices. And the guys, I think his website, thewellnessenterprise.com, I think. But on the radio show, he gives his website and he talks all about structured water and he teaches you what it is and where it came from. No, I don't think that does it. If you shake it just the right way, because really how they're structuring it is just a vortex action. So maybe if you can do it, if you're a good dance move guy, maybe. Yes.
What about the plastic? You buy a lot of bottled water. Plastic.
Plastic's not good. The real crinkly, super soft, real loud noise, cheap water bottle plastics, those emit a lot of different plastic particles from the screw lid, but also just leaching off the wall of that plastic into the water, especially if it's heated, like it sits in the back of the car or the truck, or the sun shines hitting it at the convenience store when it's outside in a big pallet. So that, you don't want that. The water bottles that are more firm, like the Fuji, and we'll find out. That's where you can, because I mean we haven't even talked about Wi-Fi, and that's the new natural medicines, even 5G, and from another world. I mean, there's definitely do any of this out of fear. Where occasionally, if you have to have a water bottle, it's okay. You just don't make it your rule of every day I'm going to have that. Get a glass water bottle that guy sells on his website that actually has rocks, these stones, crystals in the bottom. It looks kind of weird, and you might think, new agey. All the chairs emitting a frequency. Those stuff. I'm way overboard, but I told you y'all could leave. Okay, coming. Thanks, Allison.